If you've got your Bible with you this morning, turn over to Matthew chapter 7. We're going to read verses 15 through 20 here in just a second. But I want to start out this class this morning with a question. And don't be afraid to answer a question this morning. It's a Bible class, and I love it when people talk back if I ask questions. But a couple of ones that I want you to ponder, and you don't have to answer these out loud, but if someone spent 1 week with you, didn't know anything about you, they met you for the first time, whether it's at work, maybe it's in traffic, maybe they see your social media page, whatever it may be, at the end of that week, what would they conclude about your faith? Now again, they know nothing about you. They don't know whether you're a Christian, where you attend worship. They don't know any of that. They spend a week with you. What would they conclude about you and your faith at the end of that week? Would they know you're a Christian because of what you say and because of how you live? Think about that for just a second. Not a question that maybe you've thought of in a little while. It's a very sobering question. What would somebody think of me if they knew nothing about me? You see, Jesus teaches that people are not ultimately known by what they claim. And I think a lot of us know that in our life. Probably a lot of you more than I do. I'm just 26. There's a lot of people in here that's lived a lot longer than me, know a lot more than me. But Jesus teaches that people are not known by what they claim, but by what their lives produce. Fruit is the visible evidence of an invisible root. You guys have probably heard that. So this morning we're going to examine what Scripture says about the fruit of a disciple. Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20. We're going to read that together. It says, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from the thorn bushes or figs from the thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit. But the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits." What stands out to you? In Jesus' words here, what's some things that stand out to you? Again, Matthew 7, verses 15 through 20. What stands out to you in that passage? One thing that stands out to me, or a couple things really, is Jesus says the words recognize twice. 2 times in this series of 5 verses, he says, I want you to not just look, I want you to recognize these fruits that people that call themselves my disciple bear. Fruit is observable, right? Trees naturally produce according to their nature. And the big thing that stands out to me, and that we're going to kind of hone in on for a little while, is false appearances do not last forever. Now, I say that, and I say I want to hone in on that a little bit because it's pretty easy to fool people, right? It's pretty easy, especially to the naked human eye. We naturally are going to miss things. And especially me, because I wouldn't consider myself the observable type, right? I can look at something over and over and over and probably see something that I miss over and over and over again. A lot of us are that way. But we have all at some point been fooled by something. And the old saying that if something's too good to be true, probably not true. But we think about false appearances don't last forever. There's one person that we can't fool, and who is that? It's God. You see, we can live our life, we can fool our church family, we can fool our coworkers, we can fool our classmates, we can really convince somebody that we've got it going on as a Christian. We can really convince even our brothers and sisters that we are on fire for Christ, but we can be as cold as can be, and they may never know. False appearances don't last forever. The first point I want to make this morning is fruit reveals the heart. Jesus compares people to trees for a reason. I did a time at Tennessee Tech where I was studying agriculture to be an agriculture teacher, and trees don't simply decide each season what kind of fruit they're going to produce. It's just scientifically impossible. Now, there may be a lab somewhere that none of us know about, that they have a tree that in one season might produce apples, and then the next season it may produce oranges or whatever, but we can't just buy that at Johnson's Nursery here in town. Probably not. But trees don't just decide what they're going to produce. You see, if you go to the store and you're wanting to buy some apple trees to plant, and the tag says apples, and you plant them, and you get oranges, you get pears. Well, my friends, you don't have an apple tree. It doesn't matter what the tag says it is. You know what that tree is by what it produces. So if you buy something, it doesn't matter what the tag says it is. What it produces shows you what it really is. And the same thing is true for us this morning. What are, as the Christians, and for you, the Christians that meet at Center Grove, what are your identifying marks as a Christian? Anybody have a comment on that? What as Christians, as New Testament Christians today, what identifies us as that? How can people know that we're Christians? That's the perfect example. By the way we live our life. Our words, how we treat people, our attitude, our reactions to things, our priorities. All of these reveal what is taking place in our hearts. And we struggle with that. And I'll be the first one to tell you I struggle with that. Sometimes my words don't match the label that I wear on the outside as a Christian. And I know I'm not the only one this morning. Sometimes my attitude does not match the label that I wear as Christian. Our reactions can be pretty good sometimes, can't they? You know, one thing that I have really tried to master, I guess, in the last year or so is my reaction to things. I work with about 20 guys, and we do heating and air, and that's my day job at a C&W Mechanical. And sometimes I get a little stressed out. Sometimes my reactions are not what they should be. And you guys could probably fill in the blank for something that you struggle with in your life. In Luke chapter 6, in verse 43 and through 45, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it says, "For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks." Now, why do you think in both of these passages of scriptures we've talked about this morning, why do you think he compares us or uses the illustration of fruit instead of leaves? No wrong answers here. It's just something that I thought about the other night putting this together. But why do you think he uses fruit instead of leaves? The fruit is the heart of everything. Maybe you really care about the leaves. It's so funny because, and this happens a lot. Now, this seems silly, but I love it when people look at a tree or something and they ask me, and I don't know if it's because I studied agriculture for a little while, but they'll be like, Dylan, what kind of tree is that? I haven't got any idea. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what any kind of tree is based on the leaf. I don't know. But I guess they just think that's a magical question that I'm going to know the answer to. But now if you look at an apple tree, what question are you not going to ask? If you do ask it, I won't make fun of you. But if you're staring at an apple tree, are you going to ask the question, what kind of tree is that? Probably not. Maybe you will. No judgment. Yeah, if there's no fruit on it, if it's not in the producing season, you might. But if you don't have, Blake, sorry. It's the appearance. It's the marks of what it is that truly show it. And that's so true for us. Our words, our attitudes, our reactions, that is the defining thing that can show people that we're Christians. The way we love other people, the way we treat other people, that's a defining mark. At the end of that week that we talked about a few minutes ago, when you're spending time with somebody that knows nothing about you, that's your defining mark, is the fruit that you bear. Is it possible for someone to appear to have a relationship with God but consistently produce ungodly fruit? Beware of false prophets. We read that earlier. Have you ever known someone whose daily conduct made it obvious that they belonged to Christ? I think we all know somebody like that in our life. Everything that they said was driven by the fact that they had a relationship with God. That was one thing, I don't know if you all know or have heard the name Kevin Darty at Sycamore Church of Christ. I worked under him. I was his youth intern for about a year and a half before I went to Double Springs as the youth minister. And that was somebody who every word that came out of his mouth, you knew. You knew. There was something different about that guy. Do people see the same thing about us? Every decision, every action is driven by Christ. You know, the fruit that we bear, kind of going off of what Relin says, the real meat of this morning is the fruit that we bear is more than just church attendance. Now let me finish my point here before you throw stones at me. How do we evaluate faith, especially if we're looking at somebody else? If we're looking at somebody else and we're trying to figure out, you know, how they're doing, how their relationship with Christ is, we tend to look at them and look at their attendance. Well, you know, they're at church every time the door's open. They're there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays, they're at all the events. We look at our Bible class teachers and we say, hey, you know what? They're on top of it. If we're talking about ourselves, we can even put ourselves in that category. Well, I attend worship. I teach class. I give every Sunday, just like I'm supposed to, joyfully and cheerfully. I know the Bible. Guys, these things are crucial. These things are a very crucial thing and a part of our lives that we should put a lot of attention to. But Jesus says the fruit is seen in what happens outside of these walls. And without getting too much into our lesson this morning for worship, that's a really big thing. Because see, it's easy to sit in this Bible class this morning and be a good Christian. It's easy to sit in worship and be a good Christian. You're surrounded by your brothers and sisters. You're surrounded by support. You're surrounded by like-minded individuals. It's great to be here on Sundays. It's like a family reunion. You know everybody, right? Everybody loves you. But real fruit is seen in situations where maybe we're not surrounded by our church family. Real fruit is seen in our homes, in our marriages. Andrew and I, we don't have children yet, but in your parenting, right? And you guys know way more about that than me, so I'm not even going to go on parenting. I don't have no grounds to talk about that this morning. It's seen in your workplace, in your schools, in your friendships, in the way you handle money. This is a big one, dealing with conflict and serving others. Why do you think these areas that I just mentioned, and maybe you have more that I didn't mention, why do these areas test our faith? Why do you think? We all have something that tests us. And I'm a very transparent person, and the one thing that tests me is my lack of patience. Specifically when I'm behind the wheel of a vehicle. I'm just going to be honest with you. The guest speaker is going to be very honest. I travel a lot for work, and I'm up and down I-40 a lot, going up and down Monterey Mountain, and I seem to always catch it, right, when all of the other truckers that are going that way are also trying to go up the mountain at 30 miles an hour. Just nearly sends me over the edge. But in those situations, my faith is tested. Can the people that look into my vehicle as I'm driving realize I'm a Christian? When we're under a lot of stress at work, when we're under a lot of stress in our home, that's when our faith is tested. Because we think in our minds, nobody can see me right now. Nobody knows what I'm going to do. Nobody can hear my thoughts. Nobody's looking at me right now. I can do whatever I want. Nobody's going to know. They will. That's the moment that our faith is tested. Turn over to Galatians chapter 5. This is where we're going to spend almost the remainder of our class. Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23. A passage we've probably all heard before. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Now, we probably have all heard this before, but if you've got your Bible this morning, I want you to look at that list. You see, Paul doesn't describe extraordinary accomplishments here. And see, I think we read this list quite a bit and maybe we get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed because the world has really, really skewed our view of what accomplishments really are. What do I mean by that? What does the world see as an accomplishment? Success, money, status, the kind of car you drive, the kind of house you live in, right? That's what an accomplishment is. Paul is teaching us here that this is the accomplishment. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing extraordinary. It's how we should conduct ourselves in every situation, every single day. If we can truly master the fruits of the Spirit, we have everything. I don't care what kind of house you live in. I don't care what kind of car you drive. I don't care what you do for a living. If we can master this list that we just read, we have everything. We have everything here on earth, and we will be rewarded with everything in heaven, and that's all that matters. Reading this list describes a transformed character. That's what it means to be a Christian. When you are baptized into that watery grave and you come up a new person, you are transformed in your actions, in your attitudes, in your words, in your reactions. You are transformed. You are supposed to be different. You see, Jesus changes who we are before He changes what we accomplish. And we see about all of the worldly success, and when we think that, if I can just do that, I've made it. If I can not worry about my bills, if I know my family's taken care of, if I know, and we do all these things, and we have this checklist in our brain, and what's going to happen if we're able to accomplish all of those things? We have nothing. If our entire life is driven by worldly accomplishments, we have nothing in the eyes of God. If we don't have a relationship with Him, a transformed relationship with Him. We're going to go through these with as much time as we have. We're going to go through these this morning. And we're going to start out with love. How does biblical love look in everyday life? In your opinion, what does biblical love look like in your daily life this morning? We don't see that a whole lot, do we? I've just totally stopped watching the news. I don't like to see the hate that's going on in our world, right? I don't like to see even people claiming to be Christians saying some of the things that they say. You know what that does to our minds? It's discouraging to really look at what the world is doing. We don't even want to talk about this morning on what the world defines love is. It's disgusting. Biblical love every day is seeing people through the eyes of Jesus. Seeing people as a soul that needs to be saved. Seeing people that need the love of Jesus in their life. And us taking actions to figure out how to share that love with them. The only difference in us as Christians and the world as non-Christians is we have simply found something that maybe they've not found yet. And it is our ultimate goal to share the gospel of Jesus with them. And I think a lot of times we don't, because we leave that to other people. We leave that to people that are elegant in speaking. We leave that to our preachers. We leave that to elders. We leave that to people because we say, that's not my job. I'm not comfortable doing that. We don't grow until we're out of our comfort zone as Christians. We don't. It scares me to death to teach an adult Bible class. I'm scared to death. I don't teach adult Bible classes very often. But I wanted to because I want to grow. We grow when we're uncomfortable. So this morning, while we talk about love, I want you to think in your mind, how can I share the love through the gospel of Jesus to somebody this week? You see, I want you to think about the people that you regularly see. Co-workers, maybe even family. People you go to school with. People you see at Walmart. Think about people that you see on a regular basis, and I guarantee you, you know somebody that does not have a relationship with Jesus. I guarantee you know somebody. Now, I think oftentimes when we talk about trying to bring people to Christ, we ultimately think about, well, that means I've got to go up and talk to them. And I don't know what to say, and I'm afraid. Maybe that's not your strength, and that's okay. But there's a way you can do it. In those things we talked about at the very beginning of class, your words, your reactions, your attitudes, the way you live your life, that I believe somebody mentioned just a few minutes ago, the way that you live your life can be the only Bible somebody ever sees. Biblical love looks like sharing the gospel of Jesus through your life. Whatever talent that you have, and you do have one, whatever talent that you've been blessed with, use it. Find a way to use it and to share the gospel, and don't look at somebody for their shortfall. Don't look at somebody and see all of the things that the world sees. We never talk about good things about other people. We usually pick out the bad things. Look for the good things and realize that the only difference between them and me is the fact that I found something and they haven't. Something that changed my life, something that transformed me. I'm going to share that with them. And sometimes that takes one conversation, sometimes that takes years. But the work that we do matters, no matter how long it takes. How is Christian joy different than happiness? Anybody have a comment about that? How is Christian joy different than happiness? A peace that surpasses all understanding, right? What else? Patrick? It kind of plays along with the worldly view of accomplishments, right? We sing the song, "This world is not my home," quite a bit. That should give you that ultimate joy. That should give you the peace that surpasses all understanding. But again, the world skews our view of what happiness really is. Happiness is status and money and taking as many steps up the ladder as you possibly can in this world. And God, I'm just going to say this, and this is just my opinion. If that's the only thing you're living for, that's a miserable life. If the only thing that truly makes you happy is looking at your bank account and realizing that that's everything to me, that's all I've got, that's not what life is about. You see, Christian joy has a lot to do with that peace that we just talked about. Christian joy is being with your brothers and sisters. Christian joy is finding opportunities to share the love of Jesus. Joy and happiness are two very different things. What brings you joy in life? Think about that this morning. You don't have to answer out loud. Is it the things in the Bible that we read? Is it all the things we talked about this morning that brings you joy? Or is the only thing that brings you joy worldly things? If so, then there's a problem there. How can a Christian display peace during uncertainty? We live in an uncertain world. How can we as Christians display peace? And I think we just mentioned it. This world is not our home. No matter the things that are going on in the world, we know that this is not our home. We have a job to do as Christians. We have a job to do, and that's to be an example and to preach and to teach. And we want to go to heaven. And I tell people it's very simple, but I tell people all the time that our job as Christians is we and our family, we want to go to heaven. And we want to bring as many people with us as possible. That's our job. That is a very, 1,000-foot view of our purpose on this earth. We want to go to heaven, and we want to bring as many people with us as we possibly can. We want to fill that bus. In doing that, people should see our peace as something that they don't even understand. They don't even understand that we can remain that calm when everything around us seems to be falling apart. And at some point, I would hope that somebody would ask. If somebody has ever asked you that question, come find me after this Bible class. I want you to teach me something. Please. But if somebody walks up to you and says, you're so calm when everything around you is falling apart, how do you do that? There's your opportunity. Because we're Christians. Because we serve a risen Savior that cares about us, that loves us. And though we may not understand what is going on in this life, I know God has my back. If we can truly exhibit this idea of peace, I hope someday somebody will ask you, what's so different about you? I think I've already talked about this one a little bit. Peace, this one steps on my or patience, not peace, we just talked about that. Patience, the steps on my toes a lot, something that I'm working on. Who usually tests our patience the most? Don't answer that question, that was a joke. I set you up. How does patience glorify God? How does patience glorify God? See, it's not exactly the patience part. It's everything that flows from it when you're not. It's everything that happens as a domino effect when you are not patient. Does that make sense? When that is all our mind goes to. And I have a one-track mind. If I think about something and I want to get to that accomplishment, I have no patience. I refuse to accept that it's going to take me a while to get there.
Hey, when you have no patience, getting all upset and bent out of shape doesn't get you there any faster. Okay, that's step one. That's 101. You may as well just step back and take it easy.
And when we don't step back and take it easy, that's when we get in trouble. It's not the patience part that's really the problem. It's everything that flows after that. When we fly off the handle because we refuse to wait. We refuse to study and to learn. Kindness, I'm going to try to land this plane very quickly. Kindness. Think of someone whose kindness has influenced your faith. How did that make it memorable? Goodness in today's culture is something that we don't see very often. Gentleness, self-control. I say all of this morning to say bad fruit doesn't usually appear overnight. And I don't want you guys to think that I know that we've heard all of the things that I'm saying. I know you guys have heard it before, but sometimes it's worth to go back and talk about it, to really dive into it a little bit. The fruits of the Spirit are something that we teach our children a lot, but when was the last time you looked at that list? As adults, as mature Christians. Because if we can't figure out love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, I think we might start seeing some bad fruit. And it doesn't normally just appear overnight. Spiritual decline happens gradually. Spiritual decline happens when we forget the lessons we learned as a child as mature Christians. David didn't wake up one morning intending to commit adultery. That wasn't just a flip of a switch. Judas didn't suddenly betray Jesus. Small compromises become larger ones. Small compromises, when we have the opportunity to love and we don't because we think nobody's watching, it's detrimental. When we choose worldly happiness over joy, Christian joy, when we choose not to have peace, when we choose not to be patient, you guys know where I'm going with this. Fruit requires remaining connection to Christ. Fruit requires all of us to remain connected to Christ. John chapter 15, verses 4 and 5, I'm going to paraphrase this. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, neither can you unless you abide in me. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So this morning, I want us to really think about that and go back to this question we talked about at the very beginning. If somebody spends a week with you, they know nothing about you, they know nothing about your faith, what are they going to conclude at the end of the week? There's really something different about that person. They live differently than anybody I've ever met. Would they know that you're a Christian because of what you say or because of how you live?